All right, before I begin this next section, I'm going to apologize in advance. It's going to be a bit on the long side, but it just needs to be done in one fell swoop. Okay, I need to give you some background. I got married at 19. I was in the Army. I was living in Dugway Proving Grounds, Utah, which is an itty bitty place in the middle of the Great Salt Lake Desert. My wife, my then wife, the one I got married to, Angie, had 3 kids, and they were 7, 6, and 2. So shortly after getting married, and we had a lot of issues with her ex-husband because he was on base also, and he was MP, I was a cook. There was some rivalries back and forth between the factions there. I was harassed on a regular basis for dating his ex-wife, whatever. We got married. A lot of that stopped. But we got married in January. In February, my ex-mother-in-law, or my mother-in-law at the time, had an aneurysm rupture in her head and had to go to the hospital in Salt Lake City, which is about an hour and a half away. Angie went and stayed with her. Understandable. So now I was a single parent, essentially, with 3 kids, 7, 6, and 2. New to me, basically. Then, about a week later, my sister-in-law, Susan, flew in from New York, left her 6-month-old with me, and she went to the hospital. Now, granted, she would have the 6-month-old back and forth sometimes. Sometimes she could have her at the hospital. Sometimes she was home with me. So now I'm a single father of 4 trying to deal with this. And this went on, I think, for about 3 months before they all came back. When they did come back, when my mother-in-law was released from the hospital, we were living in a 3-bedroom house on base, 3-bedroom duplex. So it was probably, maybe 900,000 square feet, whatever it was. 4 kids and 3 adults, all crammed into that one house. All right. So the reason why I gave you this background is that I'm going to walk through the power and control wheel. I will make sure that there's one posted on eLearn so that you have a copy of it, or you have a potential to download it if you want it. It will pop up with our PowerPoint, and I'll walk through it. But I wanted you to be aware that I'm going to refer a lot of stuff back to me and that. The first time I saw this power and control wheel was about 5, 6 years ago now. By the way, I've been married to my current wife for 20 years. So that's how long it's been since I was around Angie. First time I saw this power and control wheel, the first time I walked through it, and they went through it in class and explained it to me, I was going, that was Angie, that was Angie, that was Angie, that was Angie. Before that, I did not recognize that my relationship with Angie was abusive. I did not see myself as a victim. I still don't see myself as a victim. I'm a survivor, and it was a very toxic relationship. But a lot of the situations that we see are the ones that we'll see in this. So let me walk through this after that very lengthy introduction, and let's go through the various stages. Okay. So let's walk through this. First thing I want to point out, this wheel, power and control wheel, is the Duluth model of domestic violence. It is one of many. It deals primarily with more direct, very abusive scenarios. There are ones that deal with models that deal with, when both parties get drunk and they abuse, mutual abuse, all those things. So this is not the one end all be all thing, but it is probably the most prevalent one and being used today. Next thing I want to point out, whenever you pick up a wheel and you look at something with spokes like this, you usually start at 12 o'clock. Right? And then you start working around. This one starts at 3 o'clock and works around. Okay. Sorry, mouse is being psychotic. All right. Next step. Let's look at the first one. Using isolation. When you are in an abusive situation, your person will tend to try to control what you do, try to prevent you from being able to go out, do things, to really limit your outside involvement, and try not to let you do things. You want to go hang out with your friends, they'll try to stop you and say, well, I don't like it when we go out with your friends because then they hit on you and they don't want you and then it makes me so jealous and I just don't like that, so let's stay home. Or your mom doesn't like me. She really doesn't. Let's just not go this Sunday. Let's stay home. I know that they don't like me. I know that they're not interested in or whatever. I, growing up, have always been a one friend kind of person. I had that one really, really good friend. That's that person I latched onto. I mean, I had other friends and whatever, but that was the one I did everything with. So when I got married, by the way, I got stationed out in Dugway Proving Grounds, Utah. I had a few friends in there, but not many of them, and we're talking little bitty podunk place. So when I got married, Angie was that friend. So I didn't really see the isolation and stuff until when I moved to, when we got out of the Army and I moved to Missouri and I was going to school and I was working at a grocery store stocking shelves at night. And I went to go with one of my friends at work. His birthday was that day. So when he got off work, we went, had dinner, or had I guess dinner technically. It was me right after work. Probably had a beer, some birthday cake, hung out for about an hour, and then went home. By the way, this is pre-cell phone days. I got there. I spent probably the next week catching grief about the entire situation. It was me, my friend, and his wife there. Apparently, we were busy having a menage a trois. You know, everything was all this, that, or whatever. I never really got that. So going through, I was never really allowed, as in a relationship, to have friends outside of this relationship. The next one is minimizing, denying, and blaming. So when they're really talking about, and by the way, even though this is a wheel and it does go in a circle, it all doesn't happen necessarily in a circle. It bounces around. If everything does this, yes, they start kind of with isolation, but then, you know, abuse is going on, things are, we start minimizing. We make light of it. It didn't happen. Angie used to be very nasty with me as far as stupid jokes. She was a little cruel. You know, we call sarcasm. She was on sardonic level. This is like the next level of actually trying to be hateful and nasty with me. And when the jokes didn't land, it's like, oh, I was just kidding. I wasn't trying to be mean. I wasn't doing those things. You didn't get hurt. Nothing happened. I didn't mean to hit you. I didn't mean to throw that thing at you. It just slipped. I didn't do the things. These are the kind of things that they would do. They would claim that there's no abuse going on. They would, and even if there was, it's like, you know what? If you'd have just done what I told you to do the way I told you to do it, I wouldn't have had to hit you, or I wouldn't have had to do the things that I said. It is your fault that this is happening. There were plenty of times that I ran into this. One time me, Angie, and the 3 kids were loaded up in a little car, heading up to the airport to go pick up the kids' great-grandmother. At some point, we stopped at McDonald's, and I assume the drive-thru must have been pretty backed up because I went in to get food. Just Angie said, go get some food. What do you want? Just go get something. So I came back with a whole bunch of probably what was on sale, which would have been sausage biscuits and those things. I spent the next 2 hours drive to the airport being screamed and yelled at because she doesn't like sausage. If I had known she didn't like sausage, you damn well bet I wouldn't have bought it for her. Because, and we'd been married a few years now, so, you know, you'd think that's something I'd known. Because I'm not masochistic. I don't like being pain inflicted on me. And that's what it was. Screaming and yelling and all that stuff. The next one is using children. Angie had 3 kids. We didn't really have an issue with this because they were her children. But let's walk through what a lot of people do on this. They'll try to make you feel guilty about the kids. You're not taking care of the kids. You're not paying attention to the kids. The kids need your help. They're falling bad in school. He just started wetting the bed again. Why is that? Because you're not really paying attention to him. Oh, you have to work too? I'm sorry, I work as well. So you need to step up and do it. I'll relay messages. Let's say we are separated. You know, I'm in the bedroom. Go tell your mom to bring me a beer. Go tell your mom to do this. Tell your mom to do that. If you're separated, if you're no longer, they will use the visitation to continue the abuse and harassment. They will send messages through the kids, put in their little things if they're babies or whatever. They will tell the kid parent, the other child, the child that you were doing this thing bad or that thing. They'll threaten to take your kids away from you. And unfortunately, I will tell you that to get a DCS case initiated is relatively easy. That's good in protecting of kids. It's bad when you're talking about abusive people using it to their advantage. All right, I know some of you don't believe that male privilege exists. And for this case, we're not really talking about specifically male privilege in the way of male privileges, but we're talking about this. The guy is that person. He is the king of the castle. He's treating you like a servant. It is you to do these things. These are my things. I did get a little of this on the inverse. Angie used to try to make it sound like this is my job. That's my job. That's your job. That's a man's job. Go do the yard. Man's job, do this. Man's job, do that. Fix the things. These are all the man's job. Go do the jobs. I worked full time, went to school full time. She didn't. The guys will say, well, don't worry, Pearl head about things. I will make those decisions for you. Well, considering that I was the younger, she used her age instead. I was 19 when we got married. She was 25. So there was about a 5.5 year age difference between us. And she'd use my kids, I'm making all the decisions. And you'll see it in the abuse things. They're like, I'm king of the castle. This is my stuff. I'm going to do all the things. I'm going to define what's the man's role, what's the women's role. So Angie did use the inverse of that. She would use, it is the guy's job to work and provide for everybody. She would go to school. When she would get behind, she would drop. She didn't necessarily work because she got $500 a month child support. And as far as she was concerned, that was her contribution to the finances of the home. So she would adjust. And of course, it was my job to take care of everything and make sure that everything's being paid. The next one's economic abuse. In a lot of abuse situations, what you run into is that the guy does not allow the woman to get the job, or the person doesn't allow them to get another job because I'm going to make the money. I'm going to control, back to that isolation. I don't want you out with people. I want you here. I want you doing the things. Now, in the situation, and then of course, because you don't have a job, I'm going to make you ask for money. You're going to have to get money from me whenever you want. You're going to have to get an allowance. This is the money you're going to have. Now, one of the other issues you're going to run into, though, is the inverse. Let's say I don't make enough. We live in a society now that a single income household is rare. So you're going to have to work because we need to pay the bills and you got to pick your side. Thing is, they'll take all that money and put it in the bank or wherever they do. And then go back to, you have to ask for an allowance to get things. You may be the one buying the groceries and you're telling me that you need $150 for groceries. Well, here's $100, make it last. This kind of things. They'll not let you know what's going on with the income. They'll not let you know how the family bills are there. They won't let you know what's going on. It's not uncommon to see them go out and take credit cards out in your name and then come back and all of a sudden it's like, oh, you need to pay these bills. We were barely getting by anyway. Now I have to start juggling all the other things because a lot of times the victim is actually better at dealing with finances than the abuser. Now, what Angie used to do, I would get an allowance. When I was in the Army, I got paid once a month. I got paid on the 1st. We'd go buy all the groceries and all the stuff we could do except the perishables and pay the bills. And then we knew how much money we had left. So I'd get an allowance for smoking. Yeah, I smoked. Get over it. Anyway, it didn't change when I got out of the Army. Y'all know what those duplicate checks are. Those are the ones that has a check, and then when you write it, it does a carbon copy of the check underneath it. Her idea of balancing a checkbook was write all the checks out. When the checkbook, and don't carry anything, when it was empty, then we'll balance the checkbook. But she kept a running total in her head. What would happen is if I was driving an hour and a half to school at times, I had to have gas. If I had a car repair because my car was a little piece of crap, 1970 Toyota Corona. No, 79 Ford Fiesta. That was the one. Anyway, if I had to buy parts or whatever, and I had to go write a check for it, and a check bounced or another check bounced, it was my fault because I should have known to let her know how much. I never knew how much money we had. I never knew how much we needed, what we did or didn't have. That was her control. She didn't let me know. I've heard of people talking about ones that aren't allowed to have any extra money, so much so that this one woman, she had to tuck up, she'd pull up her hair and she had to keep a 20 like in her hair. Because when they went out, her and her husband would go out, whatever, he'd get pissed off or whatever, kick her out of the car and drive home and leave her to find her own way. Had to have money to buy your way home. But he wouldn't let her have any. So they use that abuse. The next one is coercions and threats. And this is the idea of telling you I'm going to do something or carrying something out. I'm going to hurt you. I'm going to beat you. I'm going to do these things. If you don't do what's coming, it's going to happen. openly threatening somebody is issues. Threatening to leave. Yes, we sit there and say, oh, they should leave. Man, if you're actually in this situation, as I can tell you I've been, the idea of him or her threatening to leave is horrifying. The idea of being without that person is terrifying to you. First off, you may not know that you can even financially support yourself without them. Maybe you can, maybe you can't. But they'll threaten to leave. They'll threaten to commit suicide. And I know that seems like, oh God, that's perfect. I have talked to victims who have been 20, 25 years after the fact and still blame themselves for the person committing a suicide. And of course, you've got the one that's going to report him or her to welfare or TCS. They're going to threaten you with everything to get you to do what you want. They're going to coerce you into doing the things. If I do actually do something and you do go and try to get a restraining order against me or order protection, I'm going to try to make you drop the charges. I'm going to threaten you with all the other things. I'm going to do what I can to get you to drop them. I'd plead, bargain. I got to have my gun because I can't do my job without my gun. And if I have an order of protection, they're going to take my guns away. And I have got to have them so I can make sure that I can pay the bills and feed the children and all the things that we have to do. Sometimes they'll do stupid crap like try to make you do something illegal. I want you to go buy some drugs for me. I want you to go sell these drugs for me. I want you to go steal this stuff for me. Put this in your purse. Do these things. Now I've got leverage against you because I probably recorded it. And now I've got, not only do I have all the other things, now I got you doing illegal stuff. That is just going to support that. One of the things I do want to point out that I didn't talk about much is this is often done by a narcissistic behavior. These are people that are narcissists, that it's all about me and I'm good. It is very common for abusers, when in front of other people, can make it seem like everything that this woman is talking about is crazy. She's freaking nuts. Can't you see I am the best person in the world? I am the ultimate father. I am loving. I am calm. I'm whatever. I am pushing your buttons. And she goes off and she's the crazy one. I'm calm. I'm the victim. So these things happen. So when you get the leverage on them and they do the things for this coercion, it's not as idle as it seems. Sometimes they'll use intimidation. Many of you probably have a parent, probably a mom, that has the look. You're arguing, doing whatever. When you look and you see that look, right now, it's time to stop because it's going to happen. In mediation, it's not uncommon. We have to pay attention to the situations because we can be talking to a husband and wife team and they're negotiating just fine and dandy and everything seems to be good. And wife is like, I want that brooch because that brooch is my mom's and it was my grandmother's and her grandmother's before. And I want the china because that was my great grandfather's. He made it and all these things. And then all of a sudden something happens. It's a look. It's a it's a whatever, something we don't know because we're not in it. And all of a sudden, oh no, honey, I understand why you should keep my great-great-great-grandmother's brooch. Just in case our daughter might want it. I want you need to keep it safe. I understand. Oh yeah, no, that china, I know you really like that china. And I know, no, you have it. And all of a sudden, everything starts going to that person. So it's those things. We don't know, because the reality of it is that person knows, the victim knows when they get home, they're going to get beat. Oh, and by the way, here's one for you. Doing a mediation, and it wasn't screened for domestic abuse. There wasn't appear to be. During the mediation, we kind of found out that it seemed like the wife was being abused, and this was a husband-wife situation. They were still living together, trying to get divorced, which that's not as uncommon as you would think. Worst thing, though, they drove together. And things were becoming heated really quick. And if we don't handle things exactly properly, she has to get back in that car with that guy and leave. And potentially be abused on the way, may not even make it home. So these are things that you got to think about. So the next thing is smashing things. They'll throw things. They'll destroy stuff. They'll break plates. They'll do whatever. They'll grab a knife and jab it into a wall, letting you know that could have been you. They'll destroy things. They'll tear up property. They'll destroy your property. They'll destroy their property and then blame you for having to go buy a new motorcycle. Because if you had just been a decent person, I wouldn't have kicked the bike and knocked it over and bent the mirror, and now I have to buy a whole new motorcycle. This one will get you killed if my wife finds out about it. Not Angie, Kim, my current wife. And they will abuse pets. Here's one of the reasons why people stay. They're abusing pets. But on top of that, so many shelters don't accept pets. Oh, sorry. So you have to leave this person with your pet if you're going to leave. And most of us look at our pets as family, and we're not willing to let someone abuse them. We live in the South. We live in gun-toting territory. It's not uncommon to walk through Walmart and see people with guns strapped to their sides and all that stuff. It's also not uncommon for those same abusers to have that gun with them all the time. They will keep it right there next to their end table while they're sitting watching TV. They'll make damn sure that their victim is fully aware that this entirely could be the day that they get shot. Gun's right there. Say something stupid. Just say something. Give me a reason. Doesn't have to say that, but they make sure you know it. They've always got a gun on them. They've always got their knife sentence where you'll know that they can cut you if they have to. So the next one's emotional abuse. This was Angie's thing. Angie was one of those people that always put me down. I'm not stupid. I am fairly intelligent. I'm above average intelligence, and I know this. So she couldn't say I was dumb. But at one point in time, she actually looked at me and said, you know what? The only reason why I stay with you is because one of these days one of your stupid ideas is actually going to make money. They'll try to put you down. They'll try to make you feel bad. They'll make you feel about yourself. They'll make you look like you're crazy. They'll play mind games with you. They'll do stupid things. They'll do whatever they can to make you feel bad. This is not uncommon. They just humiliate you. There was situations. There was one time I was, back when we first moved back to, everybody moved into that 3-bedroom house. I'm 19 years old. I might have been 20 at the time. I might have actually turned 20. So think about it this way. I've been married 3 or 4 months, 20-year-old. Angie and I go back in the bedroom. We're going to go do husbandly, wifely duties. How many of y'all are familiar with Inspector Gadget and his wowzers, right? So we're having sex, being quiet, because my mother-in-law and my sister-in-law are right literally on the other side of a wall watching TV. So we're being quiet and we're doing this and, being that, because I'm conscientious. I'm not that person. I'm not the person I am now, but I'm not that person. And all of a sudden we get done and she's like, wowzers, Tim, at the top of her lungs. So everybody knows this was prearranged and everybody knew we just had sex. And it was embarrassing for me because it was. I mean, I was 20. I was not, yeah. Anyway, I wasn't in that. What didn't work for me. So they will constantly try to humiliate you. They will constantly try to do those things. Just because it's not physical violence doesn't mean it's not abuse. Angie and I never got really into physical abuse. She never hit me. One time she'd throw things at me. One time she had thrown me one of those really heavy leaded glasses from Walmart. Got really deep base. Chucked it and I ducked just right in front of the front door, and I ducked and that thing hit the door so hard. Didn't break. Hits the steel front door so hard it left a half crescent indented in the door. She chucked it that hard. Now, don't get me wrong. We fight, we scream back and forth. I didn't feel intimidated or fear for my life that she was going to do something. At one point, I used to have a big combat knife. I was in the Army, but I had it before there. I gave it away because it turns out it's like $300 to replace it now. But I gave it away because I wasn't allowed to have it in the house. And she finally admitted the reason why I couldn't have it or guns in the house is because she'd probably use them on me. So that's the notion of what we have to deal with when you think about dealing with abuse and that. So it doesn't always have to be physical to be domestic violence. Now, obviously, you're going to have situations that people are going to go and there's going to be physical violence. Sometimes there's only once. Sometimes it's just that one time. It goes up that and it ends in death. Remember that statistic about the number of people being killed, number of women being killed by the thing? Sometimes that's it. Same with sexual assault. Now, this is something that I do want to talk about really quickly. Sexual assault is not what you think it is. Rape is non-consensual sex. That doesn't mean lack of consent. That means non-consent. You didn't give consent. So we're getting away from that a little more in time, but in the old days, in fact, to be honest with you, marital rape until the 1970s was legal. It wasn't a thing. And until I think it was 2002 in Tennessee, is marital rape actually became not a thing anymore, and it was just rape. Before then, you had to have a weapon involved. You had to have so many things for it to be classified as rape that husbands were raping their wives all the time, and there was nothing the law could do about it because it was acceptable. Remember, in the 50s and 60s, it was the wife's duty to have sex. Well, that's not the case. You are not obligated to have sex with your wife, girlfriend, boyfriend, whatever. Being woke up, you do not have the fear of going to sleep and waking up with the person having sex with you. That is rape. That is non-consensual sex. That had happened to me several times. I'd wake up with Angie on top of me. It can be the coercion of you have to do certain things. I expect you to perform oral sex on me. I expect you to do anal sex. I expect you to do any of these. None of those, if it's not at your consent, is acceptable, and they are all sexual assault. Even if you do it simply because they pressure you and you want they want to do it, and you're like, fine, just do it, or fine, I'll do that, or whatever, that still is not consent. If you are not a willing participant in the situation, it is not consent. So remember this when you're doing that. Remember these things. Do not allow your partner to control or manipulate you. One last thing I want to leave you on, just so you can hate Angie like the rest of my students do. It got to the point, I suffer from sleep apnea. I'm on a CPAP machine now. At the time I wasn't, so I fell asleep a lot. I mean, literally, I put my head on the pillow, I'm out. I'm still that way. I can fall asleep really quickly. Well, Angie got to the point that I had to attempt to have sex with her every night. Every night. Didn't have sex every night. Most of the time, she'd slap me away and tell me no. But the one day I didn't try would be the time that she wanted it, and therefore it instilled into a fight. By the way, right then, at whatever time in the morning, as I'm sitting there, can't even keep my freaking eyes open because I wasn't ever sleeping. That is sexual assault too. That is psychological abuse. It is using sex as a weapon. It is using that stuff, and it cannot happen. So do not fall for this. I tell you this not because I feel you're necessarily being abused. I tell you this to pay attention to this. One last thing to leave you on. I know I just said one last thing. If you know someone who is being abused, if you don't actually witness the abuse and see it firsthand and can testify to court that it happened, you can't stop it. If you interfere in an abusive situation, you may escalate the situation worse than it was. The victim will leave when the victim will leave. Don't keep telling the victim that they need to get out. Provide them the resources that they need. Make sure that they understand that you're there to help, that there is plenty of places around. If you're in Knox County, it's a family justice center. Call the 911, whatever. Be there for your people. Listen to them people. Realize that they will leave when they leave. And there's nothing you can do to force them out. And to actually try to force may drive them back into it worse.